Ever wondered if those epic stories from history are actually your story? Well, in this explainer, we're going to trace a real, direct family line from someone living today all the way back to a legendary warrior king. Yeah, it's a journey across 700 years, and we're going to follow every single step.
So let's start right here, in the present day, with Elle Wise. She's our anchor, you know? She's the beginning of a family tree that's hiding some absolutely incredible history.
And then there's this guy. This is her 20th great-grandfather, Robert the Bruce, the legendary king of Scots from the 14th century, the man who fought for Scotland's freedom. The gap between them is just massive, 700 years of history. So how on earth is that connection even possible? Right, that's the big question, isn't it? How do you possibly bridge a 7th-century gap? How does a modern person connect back to medieval royalty? That's exactly what we're going to unpack as we piece together this amazing lineage, one generation at a time.
Okay, so to do this, we've got to work backwards. We're starting with the most recent, well-documented history of Elle's family and taking our first steps into the past.
All right, let's trace these first few steps. The recent history is pretty straightforward, you know. It's all in the records. We go from Elle's parents, the Wise family, back to her great-grandparents, the Beveridges. From there, we follow the Scott line and then the Cowans, which gets us all the way back to the early 1800s. Each name is like a stepping stone, taking us further and further back.
Okay, hang on, because this is where the story takes a seriously dramatic turn. We're about to leave the world of old photographs and census records and jump straight into the world of Scottish nobility. And just look at this timeline. This really puts that leap into perspective. We're jumping from Joseph Cowan, born right at the start of the Industrial Revolution, all the way past Helen Drummond and Sir William Stuart, and suddenly we land in 1440 with John Stuart, the first Earl of Atholl. I mean, we just crossed centuries, from an age of factories to an age of castles and lairds. So now we're following this powerful Stuart line, a name that's basically synonymous with Scottish royalty. From the Earl of Atholl, we go to his dad, James Stuart, the Black Knight of Lorne. And then we trace the line back through Isabel and Joanna until we land on one single crucial name, Matilda, Bruce. And that name, that's the key that unlocks this entire story. This is where the puzzle pieces really start to click together. Because this noble line doesn't just connect to royalty, it connects to the very foundation of the Scottish crown itself. Now, you're probably thinking, wait, Stuarts, they were the kings, right? And that's a great question. Elle's ancestors were indeed Stuarts, but they weren't the ones who actually wore the crown. Their story runs parallel to the royal line, and the connection is just fascinating. It all comes down to this, a fork in the family tree. Robert the Bruce had two daughters who started two powerful dynasties. His daughter Marjorie married a Stuart, and their kids, they became the royal Stuart kings. But his other daughter, Matilda, that's Elle's ancestor, she married Thomas Isaac, and their children started a whole different line of powerful, noble Stuarts. So here's the bottom line. You've got these two powerful Stuart branches, and both of them come directly from Robert the Bruce, just through different daughters. On one side, you have the crowned kings, literally running the country, and on the other, you have their cousins, Elle's ancestors, the noble Stuarts, who were major power players in their own right as earls and lords. Think about what that means. While Elle's direct ancestor, James Stuart, was this important knight, his cousin, Robert III, was the King of Scotland. And the king's wife, Queen Annabella Drummond, creates another incredible link. The Drummond family was famously related to Sir William Wallace, the great hero of Scottish independence. So Elle's ancestors were not just cousins to the king, but were also kin to Wallace's family. It's just amazing. And Queen Annabella was no pushover. A historian from her own time described her as fair and honorable, sure, but also cunning, which meant cunning or skillful in her affairs. He said she was generous, too. So she was a politically sharp, highly respected queen, a pretty amazing matriarch for a family connected to so much of Scotland's history. All right, so now let's travel all the way back to the source, the one man from whom both of these mighty Stuart bloodlines, the royal and the noble, actually descend. Robert the Bruce, the man himself. He's the 20th great-grandfather who started this whole story. And he wasn't just a king, he was the king who fought for decades to make sure Scotland even remained an independent country. I mean, his life reads like an epic movie. He was crowned in 1306 and spent years fighting.
which all led to that legendary decisive victory at Bannockburn in 1314. By the time he died, he hadn't just won a war. He had forged a kingdom and secured a future for all his descendants, including future kings and, of course, Ealhweis's ancestors.
And his impact was just enormous. The dynasty he created through his daughters would go on to rule and influence Scotland for more than 300 years, which just makes this connection across time feel even more real and significant. So let's bring this incredible journey all the way back home, from the battlefields of the 14th century right back to the personal living history of today.
In the end, it all boils down to this one single number, 20. 20 generations. A mix of nobles, lairds, farmers, and just regular people, all forming this unbroken chain that stretches from a young woman today, all the way back to a king crowned over 700 years ago. So what's the big takeaway here? I think it's that history isn't just something in a textbook. It's a living, breathing story that's woven right into our DNA. Elle's family tree shows how a personal story can run right alongside the grand narrative of kings and queens, all because of one shared legendary ancestor.
And that kind of leaves you with a final thought. We've just traced one incredible bloodline back through time. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What epic stories, what forgotten heroes might be waiting to be discovered in your own family's past?